All right, in a few minutes, I'm going to play a video from Epson, and you might be wondering, what does Epson have to do with data center? And the answer is that with data center operations, we still have a need to display information. So whether we're talking operation centers, whether we're talking about status displays in the data center itself, we have a need to get information out to staff. Uh, as an alternative to LCD panels, projectors have some great benefits. Where you need an interactive solution, an interactive projector solution is going to be able to provide a larger display, typically at a lower cost than a touchscreen LCD. In cases where maybe in an operation center where I'm looking at multiple displays, if I wanted that be truly seamless, so no gaps between those displays, I can do that a lot easier with projectors. Okay, and one of the other things is with the right display surface, if I'm not using that projector to actively show information, I have a whiteboard surface I can use as a traditional whiteboard, so I get double duty. All right, so the next video is focused on a classroom application, but as you're going to see, all of that translates over into the things I just talked about. So let's run that video.
Projectors versus flat panels. What to know before deciding on the best display for your classroom. Can students read the fine print? Consider classroom design, display size, and the distance from which your student is viewing your content. Fine print can get lost on a small display. In fact, 58% of students can't read content on a 70-inch flat panel. Projectors are flexible and don't compromise whiteboard learning space, making the fine print easier to read on a larger display. With Epson's BrightLink 1485 Fi 120-inch display, it offers up to 95% more interactive space versus a 75-inch flat panel. Plus, it offers the lowest cost image per square inch versus interactive flat panel displays. And built-in wireless connectivity is easy with Epson's iProjection app to support wireless casting from your device to your students. It's compatible with most popular video conferencing platforms to collaborate with students remotely. Read the fine print. Use a trusted name. Epson Education Projectors. Create a laser-focused learning experience for your students. Epson. Exceed your vision.
All right, we're here with Jerry Diedrichs, technology consultant at Ingram Micro. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you, Andy. Happy to be here.
So we covered a lot of content today, and so kind of want to jump right really to why we brought you on, and with your background, let's just kind of start from this from the basics here and say, what should we be doing new or different in terms of data center security?
Well, it's a great question, and we get that a lot. Really, if I had to pick two things, I would say first is the data centers of today need to have the ability to segment systems from one another within the data center. And that means that servers and external resources to those servers, like databases, for instance, should only be allowed to see one another and nothing else on their travels between. So that really reduces the threat landscape. Additionally, we need to have really strong controls over external connections to those resources and to the data center itself. And it should only be allowed when there's a strong business reason to allow that access. The second point is that we really need to have tools in place that monitor network communications so that you need to be able to ensure there are no anomalies in systems access and use. You need to baseline, and then you know what normal looks like. And then when you see abnormal, that raises a flag to investigate.
So I guess one of the obvious questions is, if we look at this is the model that we're trying to build, how is that different from selling into the data center 10 years ago where, we were selling an infrastructure and expecting people to take the necessary precautions? How should we be selling now?
Sure. Yeah, the change in data centers is glacial. It doesn't happen really fast. Usually they have to move, or there has to be a really strong initiative due to costs. So what really needs to change right now, that's going to be different than it was 10 years ago, is that these data centers have always been traditionally viewed as a trusted environment. They've been the fortress that protects the crown jewels and the intellectual property and the personal identification information of employees and customers. And right now, what's happening with the change in the threat landscapes, this pulls in a zero trust methodology, which basically we need to assume that those safe places are now crawling with adversaries. So if you make that a strong assumption that it is an unsafe place, then you put practices and products together to embrace this new thinking of zero trust, where you don't trust anything and you vet everything.
So obviously, I mean, that's a very different approach from the way we used to do things. I agree that, we've been in the habit of, I don't want to say being lax in data center security, but not being as vigilant as we should, let's put it that way. But in many cases, a lot of those technologies didn't exist or the products didn't exist. What are some of the innovative data center security solutions that are out there now to really help build this kind of security first data center?
Another great question. How has the data center infrastructure evolved over time? And the evolution really takes place with best of breed products. And my general thoughts is that to improve a data center security, you have to have an orchestrated plan, and you have to consider a heterogeneous approach with best of breed tools that you can phase in over time due to staffing and costs. So first of all, data should be encrypted, and if you can't read it, you can't use it. If you steal it, it's worthless. So we have a partner with Atacama who provides a very strong encryption solution. Network systems should be micro-segmented. As I said earlier, the servers and databases and related devices in a data center should only be able to see one another. There shouldn't be any other visibility along their network path to other resources that aren't relevant to their work and purpose. So only systems with a required connection should be allowed to connect to one another. And some of our partners, Cisco and Fortinet and others, have a real good strength for this area of physical segmentation. Another approach, which is fairly new in the space, is what we call software-defined perimeters. And this is another microsegmentation practice. And what this does is it uses software and tokens that connects users with resources through a software-defined perimeter that establishes a visibility from that user and their machine to only those resources that are approved. So otherwise, they have no visibility to any other systems or data on their network paths either. And again, what we're trying to do is reduce that threat landscape. Should a bad guy get into the environment, and what the first thing they do is they start looking around. And what we want to do is limit what they see. So there are several platforms that manage network access to specific resources from outside the corporate footprint. Cloud-based SASE vendors such as BitGlass, iBoss, Perimeter 81, they provide solid remote access for users outside the environment that are coming in. And then for those environments that have a need to have a footprint inside the environment, or maybe a hybrid cloud and on-premise type of solution, there are hybrid SASE products that include ForcePoint, Beyond Trust, and OpSWAT. They all do similar things, just in different ways with different focus. Additionally, I want to talk a little bit about Beyond Trust because they really have some unique tools that are differentiators in the privileged access management space. First is what they call password safe, which manages password access so that you don't have to give that password out for elevated rights or administrative capabilities. So that's the first key here is that if you don't have a password to see, you can't lose it, it can't be compromised. That product will also establish a privileged session with a host and present the terminal in a window that the administrator can work within, never having to see the login or password at all. The system will do that login and password work for them. Number two is privilege management. This is where BeyondTrust provides tools that will enforce a least privilege access across Windows, Mac, Linux, and Unix endpoints with the ability to manage Linux and Unix devices from an Windows Active Directory console, which is very unique to that product. And finally, they have a very strong secure remote access tool that centrally manages remote access for support teams and vendors. And this product limits the systems that these users can see and access while they're connected to the enterprise. And the add-on to all of this is that all of this can be recorded and monitored live by an administrator to ensure that the activity that's occurring is actually okay.
Well, that sounds like a great suite of products and tools within some of those products. Always one of the challenges with any kind of security posture is you've got to make it in some ways easier to be secure for the users than to try to find ways around the security. Uh, Obviously there's a lot of buzz around security for obvious reasons. We hear a lot about zero trust, but you know, I may know what that is because of my experiences. But if I'm a partner trying to sell to an end customer, how do I talk about zero trust without just using buzzwords?
That's another great question. The term zero trust is really almost an overused cliche these days. Everybody says they do it. And if product manufacturers have their way, they'll sell you an exclusive stack of their products. And that isn't necessarily what zero trust is all about. First and foremost, it's a methodology and it's not a specific product. To define it, I'd say it's a blending of policy and product and monitoring that ensures that all systems and facilities are locked down as a general rule and access to each is defined by business requirements, which include date, time, location of the requested access, coupled with a process to vet each user and machine for trusted use. To take that to the next level, we have these tools will actually interrogate a machine, make sure that their patches are up to date, make sure that their software is current. We can use insider threat tools to look at a user's history on the network to make sure that they're not doing nefarious things off hours or what have you. So there's a lot of decision support that goes into making those decisions.
Well, it sounds like a great opportunity for our partner, and I'm sure they have access to you and the rest of the Ingram team as resources to help build out those skill sets.
Yep, we have the Delta Force cybersecurity team, which there's a number of us on that team, and we are all no-cost resources to our partners for Ingram Micro Value Add.
Well, I expect you may get some contacts after this. Thank you very, very much for your time, and I welcome your insights.
All right, we're bringing back John Bussard. John.
Hello, how you doing?
So, John, what are some key innovations that you've seen, not specifically HPE based, which is your specialty, but sort of enabling technology innovations in the data center space?
Yeah, I would say containerization is things that I think I know a lot of our resellers haven't necessarily gone down the Docker or the Kubernetes route. We certainly heard a lot of buzz in the industry to really achieve that ability to move in and out of the cloud, burst and grow into the cloud from on-prem to the cloud because we're living in a high-T environment. Containers is going to be the answer. App modernization, those type of things are what's really gonna I see as kind of the future.
All right, so I think as I talk to you, we talk often about the cloud's relationship with the data center, but I know HPE has a solution that I wanted to ask you about called Hpe Cloud Volumes. So okay. One, in that bigger instance of the relationship between cloud and data center, could you just tell me what Hpe Cloud Volumes is, and then tell me what problems it helps solve?
All right, so going back to kind of the Kubernetes or Docker thing, you move your application around, but what about your data? You create a service within the cloud, you have your data within the cloud. It's kind of like Hotel California. Once it's in there, you can never leave without great cost, right? Now, Hpe Cloud Volumes kind of gives you an alternative to that approach. It allows you to be owner of your own data. And there's 3 different ways that you can use Hpe Cloud Volumes. One of the ways is I could use it as block-based storage for your incidents that exist in the cloud. So you create something like an Amazon EC2 incidents, VM up in the cloud. Instead of showing the storage that's within Amazon or Azure or whoever you're using, right, you can have their data live on Hpe Cloud Volumes. Now, the benefit of that is now I can move it between different cloud providers. If I'm done with AWS, want to move to Azure, I can pick up my data and move that without egress costs or anything like that. And this is very high performance. Hpe Cloud Volumes has direct links into these data centers, whether we're talking about Google, whether we're talking about Microsoft's data centers, or we're talking Amazon's data centers, so it's very fast, but you're going to have the ability to be able to move that. Now, another way you can use Hpe's Cloud Volumes is as a replication target, so site-to-site replication. Basically, what that is taking what's on another array and copying it to a secondary array somewhere else. So that could be the secondary array could be Hpe's Cloud Volumes, so my volumes can be replicated up into the cloud if I wanted to. And then if something happens catastrophic on the main site, right, I got my data in the cloud, I can re-replicate that down to a separate array if I wanted to, or I can recover it within the cloud. So again, take those volumes, attach it to Azure, AWS, whoever I'm using. So that'd be the second way. Now that's not a one-way street. I could change in the cloud and then re-replicate back on down. The third way you can use Hpe Cloud Volumes is as a backup target. So for your backup software, the who's who supports it out there. So something like, for example, Veeam, you could point to Hpe Cloud Volumes as a backup target, so you can back up directly up into the cloud, and then you have the ability to be able to recover that. Now, that doesn't rely on any Hpe-specific hardware or anything like that, so you can have vendor XYZ within your data center. You could still use this Cloud Volumes to be able to back up into the cloud. So those are the things that are inventive about this. It allows your customers to take ownership of the data, and anytime this moves out of the cloud, you're not getting charged for it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. If I have it right, you're saying it's, I could keep my investment in the flexibility of the cloud, but I'm also kind of taking back ownership of my actual data and governance of that data, regardless of what might happen from the cloud perspective.
Yeah, think about when that's wrapped with containers, right? So now the app can move in and out of the cloud as well as the data can move in and out of the cloud. And we kind of get that true motion. Like we all remember the first time vMotion where we moved a virtual machine from one host to another host, no downtime. We're starting to get in that perspective when we look at the cloud and on-prem with these type of solutions.
Are there any common misperceptions or objections you run into when you talk Cloud Volumes with customers?
Usually people start to think that there's going to be an egress fee that's associated with this, right? But again, I can't hit that home enough. There's no egress fees. You want your data out of the cloud, you pull it out of the cloud. You want it in the cloud, you put it in the cloud. Just kind of pay for the ongoing subscription for that based on what you're using.
All right. Well, thank you, John. I'll ask you one more question, okay? And I want you to give me your one favorite thing. You do all these different demos for customers pretty much night and day with all the HP solutions that you manage here in the BTC. What's the one thing that sort of gets you the most stoked to show our customers?
Certainly Cloud Volumes. Once I learned about that solution, so that has huge impacts on life. But other things like DHCI, this is the DHCI solution down here, doing hyperconverge just a little bit differently. And then the way that we're managing this through the Data Services Cloud Console, the SCC. So that's a solution that from HP that's up in the cloud that allows us to manage a variety of HP storage solutions from within the cloud easily with not a lot of management headaches.
All right. Thank you, John. We appreciate you being here today, and we appreciate you managing all that equipment for us.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Wrapping it up here, we have one more headset test to go, and this one I'm testing the S450 XT, which is the Blue Parrot headset with double ears. And the noise canceling mic in this very loud environment. So what I like about this one, the 2 ears when you really need to concentrate on what someone else is saying on the other side of you, yet you're still working, hands-free in a noisy environment. And then one of the other things I've noticed about this one in particular, is that the battery life is really good. So obviously, if you're out here working, you don't have to worry about charging it as often, and you can have confidence that it'll last you a full day. So hey, thanks everyone for coming to our event. We appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a great day.
We're here again in our outside data center, and now I'm with Mark Baker, one of the technology consultants here at Ingram Micro. Theme today is data center. One of the questions we're asking is, what is the modern data? So what is the modern data center to Mark Baker?
Really, it's a variety of things, not just one thing. As things have changed in terms of expanding to cloud services, software as a service, infrastructure as a service. So it's very difficult to pin down. It can be a very small company with a 6x8 closet and running off of building air conditioning on up to a monolithic huge room, space, locked doors, glass walls, and all that sort of thing. So I think it's constantly changing, and we're going to see it continue to change. So it's very difficult to define it as one thing.
Well, speaking of that rate of change, because that's obviously one of the big things, and we've gone through a lot of that recently. Obviously our approaches have to change on a lot of other things as well. So one of the obvious questions, knowing your background, is going to be around security. What are the things that we need to really think about when we talk about data center security these days?
Well, I think the tried and true, of course, practices that we've always used in terms of especially on-premise data centers, but also now again with cloud and hybrid cloud, it's a matter of expanding those practices to meet those challenges and the increasing risk involved with more providers, more data center locations, more practices, and more types of applications that we used to keep nice and safe inside our own data center on-premise, and now we're putting them out in the cloud where we really can't touch and feel them as we used to.
So that kind of brings us to, speaking of changes, obviously through the pandemic, data centers still had to keep going, but we made a lot of changes. The way I look at it is a lot of the journey that organizations were on to digitally transform and change how they operate, it had to get moving a lot faster. Now I think we're kind of saying, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What do we need to be thinking about as we look at this new model?
Well, I think we're going to continue to look at what went right and what went wrong for months and maybe years to come. But I think it's the biggest lesson to me was we found out we could do it. We can do this. We can send our workforce back home, and they can work from home and be successful in doing so. We can trust our workforce to do that, and we can trust our security measures to keep the company protected during a time like that. I think that probably not that long ago it would have been unthinkable. But that's one of the biggest things is that we allowed ourselves to kind of expand the workforce out into the field and still function. Going forward, we need to continue to improve and deal with that risk. What's the setup for the user at home? We really don't know necessarily. How do we do identity and access management for that environment to make sure that it's going to be effective and safe? And it's kind of a matter of adopting the zero trust concept, architecture, if you will, and understanding it and trying to put those measures in place to make sure you have a secure environment.
Now, you and I both know if we get in a conversation with that end customer, we're going to find opportunities because there's something that they're missing or they're not thinking of. But a lot of times getting that opportunity is a bit of a challenge. So if you were going to say something to a partner and say, hey, this is the one thing you need to ask your customer about to start that conversation, to find out what's going on, what would that be?
Well, I think for me it's a two-part question. I think I'd want to know, what's changed in the recent events, maybe going back a year or so before the pandemic, and what do you see in your future, a year, 3, 5 years out? And I think from that, it doesn't put them on the spot, and you'll get a lot of information about what the challenges really are and what they're facing going forward, so you can start to develop a strategy and a solution, and even find out if there's a strategy or if they're just kind of dealing with the problem du jour, and that's what gets the resources.
It seems to be, data center is classic for putting out fires, but I appreciate that, people want to plan things out, and that's a great way to do it. And obviously there's a lot of choices, a lot of different ways we can do this. So what resources really do our partners have?
Well, in terms of Ingram Micro, obviously beyond just product, we really have the people that can put those solutions, develop those solutions, and put them into place and provide services to keep them continuing. The intellectual capital, if you will, a lot of really talented people who've been in the business for years and who have developed deep understandings of the kinds of problems they're going to encounter in the field. So I think that's an important one. In terms of cybersecurity, the technology consultants on the team that I'm on are really, really talented. I've met a lot of great people, and I've been able to participate in our cybersecurity Delta Force as well, which has been, a great learning opportunity for me already. So I think that's a lot of value for the partners to take to their customers.
Well, we had a great opportunity with you participating with us today, and thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is the part where Ferris Bueller comes in and says, "Oh, you're still here now." Thanks you everybody for hanging in there. The event ran a little bit long. We had the last couple interviews after the top of the hour here, so we appreciate everyone sticking with us, or even if you're watching on video for taking a look at the content. This is BTC After Dark. I really enjoyed talking to a lot of our interviewees and listened to Andrew interview. I thought it was a great experience. So again, feedback appreciated, and reach out to us at btc@ingrammicro.com. Any feedback, or if you wanted to learn more about anything that we brought up today.